what I want to do again here is I want to keep this fat right in here. This is the keel. Think of the keel on a ship. That gives you more strength right in here. And so this will be thinner right in here, right at the neck of the spoon, fatter this way, and then thin out right in here. I'm working on the handle now to just thin this out. You'll notice as I work up closer and get closer to my shape here with the spoon, I'll be working closer to my hands. And again, that's a safety issue here. And as I mentioned earlier, you can control the hatchet more safely by holding it up closer to the head, just like this. So I'm taking shorter strokes, and as opposed to here. I'm not back here like this. Especially as I get closer to my fingers, I've got to watch my fingers. Again, one missed blow with a sharp hatchet like this could remove my fingers. Now I'm going to work the outside edge here. One thing I want to be conscious of here is the shape of the spoon, the outside shape, following the contour of the spoon. I don't want to cut into this part of the spoon, so I'm constantly feeling. Obviously, I have a lot of wood here that I've got to remove, but I want to keep that in mind, especially as I shape this outside part of the spoon. I'm going to work this down like this. Again, feeling here. Let's work this outside here. We'll work this. I can split this off, but I want to be careful that I don't take too much off, so I'm going to just watch that, shape this outside part here. There, that's just about right. There we go. That's still looking a bit crude, but we'll actually come back with a draw knife in just a moment here, and we'll finish shaping this. This will shape up just nicely with the draw knife. Can work this just a little bit more here. You can stop at any point here and go to the draw knife, and I'm fixing to do that now. You can see we're starting to get a little bit precarious out here with my hand close to the hatchet, so I think we ought to go right to the draw knife. Well, we finished up outside, and I'm here at the shaving horse. This is a great tool for holding the spoon while we shape it. And this tool actually clamps it down. There's different styles of shaving horses. I like this one because when I put pressure with my feet and I pull like this, it creates a circular motion which actually holds this in place. Very strong. So it works well. Of course, you want to keep it from coming out and hitting you. So you can actually buy these. We sell these, or you can make your own. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a draw knife, and basically a draw knife is, as the name implies, a knife that you draw towards yourself, and we'll use this to finish shaping the outside of the spoon here. So hold this in place and work this down. Again, this is a sharp tool that you're drawing towards yourself, but you've got to be careful. The only time that I've actually gotten cut is mishandling the tool. That is, if you put it down and you accidentally run your finger across the edge. So you've got to watch that. I'm working this off, and you'll notice how I'm skewing the knife like this. So as I skew it, I use more of the blade as opposed to just pulling it through straight like this. So I'm skewing it like this. Again, thinking about the grain direction, as we talked about earlier on the spoon, I've got to constantly think about which way is that grain going. If you'll notice, I'm working with the grain. I've got to constantly be conscious of which way the grain is going. And you'll notice how it comes off, it just comes off nicely. Now, if I come back here like this, you see how it digs in. That's because I'm going against the grain, and if you'll notice, this piece will just chip right off and ruin the spoon. So I've got to work with the grain. How I would deal with that is I'd turn the knife around and come back like this. Again, skewing the knife. If I push it like this, I'm just pushing the blade through, and it's not going to cut as effectively as if I skewed the knife and slice it. Making a skewing, that is, turn it to a side and then slicing it through the wood. Working it just like this. Okay, you see here, I'm working against the grain, so I'm going to come back this way and work it all along here, all along this edge. The key to all of these tools is having sharp tools, and we'll go over sharpening in a later video series, but having sharp tools is a #1 key. Okay, so we're starting to shape this. You can see I've got this, I can feel it. We're getting a little bit close. I want to stay, don't take off too much here, and I'm going to work it down a little bit more. I've got to obviously shape this curve here, so I'm going to put this in the shaving horse and clamp this down. Working this way again. Don't want to start up here. I'm starting from the top of the curve and working downhill like this. As I get down here, I'm going to slice it to the side and work it along like this. Okay, flip it over like this. Again, we'll work from the top, going all the way down, watching the perimeter. I want to leave a little flat spot there. We'll work it down. Once I get that somewhat close, let's turn our attention towards the handle. Now, I want to keep in mind, I've left a fair amount of wood here so that when I stick this in and I clamp it down, it doesn't break the bowl. So let's work this. This is a sort of a Swedish style spoon, and it's a bit flat right in here and then going to the keel right back here. But you can shape it however you want. If you want to just do a round handle, you can. This is going to have somewhat of a flat handle. And I'm going to put a nice bevel right back in here. Let's work this down a little bit more. This shaving horse is adjustable, so you can pull this up. It's got a ratchet mechanism here, which adjusts this depending on the size stock that you're working with. So put that in, we'll move it up one more notch, and we'll put this in like this. Now I'm going to work this part right in here. We'll start working that keel back here, working this like this. Again, as I mentioned earlier, green wood is the key. If you were doing this with dry wood, it just would not work the same. You'd be forcing the tool through the wood. I'm using wet wood. The moisture in the wood is helping me to work. Now, one may say, well, when this dries out, it may split, and that's true. But if I work it down to close dimensions, it will not split as long as it's close. Now, what I want to do is if I'm going to take a break here and maybe in a day or so come back and work it and it's still thick, I'll put it in a plastic bag. That will reduce the drying, because if it's still thick, it may crack. As it gets down thinner to the spoon shape, we will not have the cracking. And you may have a little bit of cracking, but again, if we put the finish on it, that will reduce that, and it will also seal the wood, and you shouldn't have a problem. I've made several of these and right from the log. And again, I cut this yesterday, so this is green. Made several of these spoons right from the log and have not had a problem with the cracking. we'll work this down just a little bit more, thinning that handle out. And this draw knife works so well. You can buy draw knives from different suppliers. I know Lee Nielsen makes one, but this is an old one that I picked up, and it works great. Okay, let's work this down. Still a little fat right in here, so we've got to work this down right in here like this. Working this down. Again, this is sculptural type work, so you make it how you want it to look. And in this type of work, there's no such thing as a mistake. It's just an opportunity for design change. I think I'm going to do a nice V shape right in there. I think that'll look nice, make that transition from the handle to the bowl. And that's somewhat traditional for this kind of spoon, this Swedish style spoon, to have a sharp transition there. But again, you can make it however you want. Let's see, let's work this down. There, just make that V nice and symmetrical on both sides there. There we go. Get in there. Let's work just a little bit more. I may turn now to a spoke shave, and that's a great tool. Let me just do a little bit more work in here, and then I'll show you what the spoke shave is. I'm going to pull this back just a little bit. Yeah, that's roughed out. Maybe a little bit. Let's do a little bit of work up here. We haven't touched this too much. We'll just clean this up right in here. Again, if I go straight like this, it's going to have the tendency to ride in and out of the inconsistencies that are here in the stock. So if I skew it like this, it's going to skew across the surface, thus making the surface flat and fair. Let's work this top of the bowl right here. Kind of smooth this out. Just flatten that out, and that'll give me a better idea. I can see that I've got to work, obviously, this side right here, and that'll be great work with the spoke shave. Nice. Okay. Now we've got starting to look like a spoon, maybe with a stretch of the imagination. Okay, now we want to go to the spoke shave. I've got a couple different spoke shaves here. I've got a metal spoke shave. This is a Stanley 51. The Stanley 151 has a little adjuster on the top here, but this was actually my grandfather's spoke shave here, and this is a wooden spoke shave, actually one that I made. The main difference between these two is if you look here, we've got the sole of the spoke shave here and the blade in here like this. This one's actually beveled down, and this one is beveled up. The blade is more flat like this. I like this spoke shave for doing end grain work and for rough removal, so I'll actually start with this one and then maybe go to this one. So we'll start by working on the outside here, and I'm going to work this, pulling it towards myself, working around the bowl. Again, I'm conscious of the grain. Okay, if I start here, I can feel it, I can hear it. You can kind of hear it as it, whereas there you get a nice even tone. So you're listening, you're watching, you're feeling the wood. Okay, let's just work this around like this. And you see we're starting to get that nice shape. Let's come in here like this. And we'll work that back of the bowl here. Feeling it, make sure we don't have any thin spots. Feels pretty good. Okay. What I want to do here is I want to flip this over and try to get this outline here to look nice. And you can draw that in, or you can just really let the tool do that for you as you work it around. So what I'm doing is I'm shaping this profile right here. Okay, so here's the grain going straight like this. I'm starting at this point, and working down. If I start here, I'm going to be pulling against the grain. See it? Pulling against the grain, whereas if I start here, from the top of that curve, work down in here like this. This is always the trickiest part of the spoon, right here at the end, this end grain. All the fibers are coming like this, and it's tricky to get the top of it. The best way to work that is to skew it, working it at an angle. You see, again, just like we were doing the draw knife, skewing it down like this, working it, slicing it, just like this, slicing it. Okay. Still leaving a little rim around the edge. And the grain will tell you if you're working against it. Okay, I'm going to go around. You see how we have a sharp point right here? I'm going to go around and put a chamfer around that edge. So we'll just come along in here, and that'll soften that. That'll preempt any breakage of the edge there, because if I had a sharp point, it could chip off. So by putting a chamfer there, it preempts that. You could even do a round over as opposed to a chamfer. Let's start shaping the handle now. Okay, you'll see how it kind of comes off. We've got a little flat spot there. Whenever I'm trying to shape a spoon or even a piece of furniture, I'm always looking at it, and I want it to have an even, fair curve. If it's supposed to be straight, that's fine. But if I want it curved, I want the curve to be fair. That is, to be a nice, gentle curve with no flat spots in it. Okay, now I've got to watch that. I don't put too much pressure there. I'll work this down. You can even support it with your hand like this. Let's put a bevel back this way. That'll kind of soften the top edge. See how I switched the spoke shave? I worked from the top down this way, but then because of the curve, I've got to work from the top down as opposed to coming, and you can see this little chip right there is actually because I went too far with the spoke shave, and it starts lifting into that grain. So we'll just work it back down, again from the top downhill, working like this. Okay. We've got to do a little bit more work on the keel here. Let's try to work that up, and I may actually, because I've chosen to do a nice sharp point there, I may actually use a knife to clean that up, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Working this down here, feeling it, trying to make it nice and round. The grain really comes alive. It's amazing that just a short while ago this was once just a piece of firewood or even a tree, and now we have something that we can use, a nice spoon here. You can see the grain in it, lovely grain lines there. Let's work this down just a little bit more here. There we go. As we get closer, I'm going to change to the metal spoke shave, and I can set this a little bit finer, and we'll work this and just try to clean all of this up here. Cleaning this up. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you another method for working this using a Swedish style carving knife. This is a Swedish style carving knife here. Now you've got to be careful using a knife, obviously, on this, and there's a couple safety things that I'm going to keep in mind. One is if I hold the piece like this and I work it like this, I can slice it towards that V. Okay, another method here. We'll turn it around, we'll work it in here. Another thing I'll do is I'll even work it like this, where I'll put my hand behind it and slice it. Again, you've got to be careful using a knife, and what you might try is on your first spoon, maybe don't do this sharp juncture right there. You could do a nice smooth transition so you don't have to use a knife, but I thought I'd show you this technique of using the knife because it enables you to be able to do things that you can't do with some of these other tools. I'm working the neck of the spoon now with a knife. The knife enables me to be able to get in this tight curve and work this out here. I'll work this back this way. Always conscious of where that blade's going to go if it does slip, so I want to watch that. Working it back like this. It's best if you can support the knife with your opposite hand. So you see we've got that nice V shape there. Let's work this chamfer. Let's continue this chamfer around here like this. See how we're working that around? Okay, we'll come in here. I want to continue this chamfer now, and it's going to actually come up in here and stop at that V. Using the same technique that we used with the draw knife, slicing the knife, using the whole knife as opposed to just pushing the knife, we're actually slicing with the knife. Now I'm necking down thinner right in here, more for visual. I don't have to worry about it because I do have the thickness right here in the keel. So, but I think that's about as thin as I want to go this way. And again, this is really up to your personal preference. We could make this totally round. As you see, we've got this little keel here, which I might work down a little bit more. Just coming in here, working that. You can also work the knife around like this. Just watch your thumb. There's another Swedish knife that you can use that's actually called a hook knife, and that's this one here. This is great for cleaning up the inside of the bowl. You can work this right along in here, cleaning up the inside of the bowl, just like this. I can work it around the edge. Now, if you'll notice, I'm working across the grain. This is a big bowl, so you've got to work it around, work it across the grain. If you don't have a Swedish hook knife, don't worry. You don't have to have one. It's just, it works sometimes for cleaning up this. I'm going to continue that chamfer right around there. That'll even up the top, and I think we'll call this done. Now there's a couple things you can do with this to finish it. You can scrape it smooth if you want. I'm not a big fan of sandpaper, especially that we've carved all this by hand, and sandpaper tends to fuzz things over and you lose some of the definition that the tools put into the work. But you can sand it if you want. You can leave it where you have these facets on there, or you can even scrape it as well. Green wood doesn't scrape as good as dry wood does, but I'll show you. I've got this. We'll scrape this, and then I'll show you on a dry piece how it scrapes as well. I'm just going to clean this up just a little bit more. Let me show you the scraper. I've got a few different scrapers here. One is a thick cabinet scraper, and this works well on broader surfaces. I've got a thin, nice flexible scraper. I actually made this from a razor saw. Filed the teeth off of it. It's nice and flexible. and then a curved scraper. You can guess what this is. This is for doing the bowl, the inside part. And the way you do this is you pull it towards you, and you can see it's scraping those nice little curls off of there, smoothing it up. Now, having a sharp scraper is the key. You've got to have a sharp scraper, and we'll show you in later videos how to sharpen a scraper. The way this works is it has a burr on it, and that burr is actually cutting. You can even put it inside the vise and work it with two hands, like this. I'm going to use the thicker scraper to actually scrape this flat area right in here. The wood is a little fuzzy because it's green, and after it dries out, even after a few days, it'll scrape even easier. The flexible scraper is great for the bowl. You'll see it'll flex right around this area here. Feel that burr. Again, if you want the tool marks, you can skip the scraping, and I think the tool marks add a lot of character to the spoon as well. I want to show you the difference between two surfaces on these spoons and how the different surfaces will look and different ways to approach finishing it. This is the spoon that I just carved, and you can see it's got some surface texture to it. And I've actually gone back with a knife because the scraper on green wood tends to fuzz it up a little bit. So I've gone back with a knife, and I've kind of cleaned up some of those little fuzz marks. But I want to show you, I've got one that I've actually had, well, since 2011, last year. I've got this one here that is dry, good and dry. You don't have to wait a year before you can scrape it. Actually, just a few days works just fine. But I've got this one I've had laying here, and I'm going to scrape this one so you can see the kind of finish that we can get on a dry spoon. It's going to be different. And then we'll oil both of them, and you'll get to see the difference between the surface on this spoon as well as the other one. Because the wood is dry, it's harder, so it tends to scrape smoother. You'll get a smoother finish as opposed to a fuzzy finish. So I'm going to work this down. You can see there's even a polish on there, a nice polish. A flexible scraper works great on a curved surface, like I've done here, as opposed to a nice thick scraper like this one. It doesn't flex around the curves of the surface, and it will work on a broader, flatter surface, but isn't as effective as these flexible scrapers. We'll do a little work on the inside. Oh, those are nice shavings there. Let's go ahead and work this out. We'll just clean this up. And again, this is for more of a refined look, if you want a more smooth look. And I said I don't usually use sandpaper, but if I do want a refined look, well, I will at least use some 220 sandpaper. So I've got some here. A quick rubbing over the surface will even out any inconsistency of the scraper. It also brings the surface to a nice even texture. Again, I'm not using the sandpaper to shape the surface of the spoon. I'm using the sandpaper to bring the surfaces to an even texture.